Our topic for this video is Evolution Among Living Things Part 2. We already looked at Part 1 where we looked at the classifications of plants and animals as well as the classification according to some kingdoms. We looked at the first three. We looked at Kingdom Monera, Protista, and Fungi. Now, on this video for the part 2, we'll be looking over plant kingdom and animal kingdom. Now, we'll take the plant kingdom first. Under the plant kingdom, we have three phyla: Talophyta, Bryophyta, and Tracheophyta. Now, the plant kingdom is where you find your normal green plants that have chloroplast and cell wall, and then their chloroplast containing the green pigment chlorophyll that helps in photosynthesis, that is production of their own food. Now, there's a taxonomy for the kingdom Plantae, that is the phyla under it. Now we'll be taking the phyla one after the other. The first phylum we'll be looking at is the phylum Talophyta. That is where you find your green algae, red algae, brown algae. Now these species that are under phylum Talophyta, they are usually non-vascular aquatic plants. That is, they don't have vascular bundles like the phloem and xylem, and they usually have thread-like or filamentous or even flat or thallus bodies that lack true roots, stems, and leaves because they're not true plants. Now, they do not have any system of conducting food and water because they are non-vascularized already. Now, also, under this phylum Talophyta is where you will see the Spirogyra representing the green algae and the Sargassum representing the brown algae, etc. Now, the second phylum under plant kingdom is the phylum Bryophyta, where we have the classes liverworts and mosses. Now, these bryophytes, they are complex multicellular green plants, and they are usually also non-vascular, just like the talophytes, but they grow mostly in damp places on land, unlike the talophytes that are strictly aquatic. And then these bryophytes, we usually liken them to being probably the first land plants. Now, they also lack true roots and stems and leaves as well. Now, we move over to the third division. Now, this is where you see the division Tracheophyta. Now, Tracheophyta is said to be a division because it has phyla under it. That is, under Tracheophyta, we still have the phylum Spermatophyta and the phylum Pteridophyta. Now, these tracheophytes, they are usually known as the vascularized plant. That is, the plants that have vascular bundles like the phloem and xylem for conduction of water and minerals. Now, since they have these vascular tissues, they are able to carry out the conduction easily. Now, the tracheophytes, they are known to be the largest group of plants, and they usually include the seed plants known as the spermatophytes and the spore-bearing non-flowering plants known as the pteridophytes. Now, we'll look at the two phyla under it. Looking at phylum Pteridophytes, that is an example being the ferns. They are usually multicellular and vascular green plants, and they're usually non-flowering. They don't bear flowers, and some of them are they are terrestrial, while some of them are aquatic, and they do not also produce seeds. They usually reproduce sexually by spore formation. Then we have the phylum Spermatophyta, that is the seed plants, the plants that bear seed. Now, they are also multicellular seed producing, but flowering plants in contrast to the pteridophytes. And then they have well-developed vascularized tissues. That is, there's presence of the phloem, xylem, and the cambium. These spermatophytes, they now have true roots, stem, and leaves. They are the true plants, and they reproduce sexually. Now, more characteristic of the spermatophytes is that they are mostly green, terrestrial green plants. Now, under phylum Spermatophyta, we have two main classes, the gymnosperms and the angiosperms. Now, the class gymnosperms, where you see the cycads, ginkgos, and conifers, they are the plants that have naked seeds and they do not bear flowers. Their trees or shrubs are mostly evergreen with needle-like leaves, their leaves are reduced in the form of needles. And then they also have few that have scale-like leaves, or some that have broad leaves too, but their leaves are majorly reduced. Now, their Their seeds are usually born in special structures called cones. Now, in contrast, for the class angiosperms, these are the plants that produce flowers and they form the largest group in the plant kingdom. Now, these angiosperms are more evolved than the gymnosperms because they have abundance of water conducting vessels and they bear seeds which are protected within their fruits. Now, the angiosperms are grouped into dicotyledons, that is the two seed leaves, and the monocotyledons, the one seed leaf. Now, if we compare the dicotyledons with the monocotyledons, we'll find out that they are quite different from each other despite being under the class angiosperms. Now, example of dicotyledonous plants are the cowpea, yam, pawpaw, etc. Then under the monocotyledons, we have the maize, rice, etc. Then while comparing, if we look at the embryo of the dicotyledons and the monocotyledons, we see that the dicotyledons bear seeds with two seed leaves or cotyledons each, while the monocotyledonous plants, they bear seeds with one cotyledon each. Then when we look at the flowers, we see that their floral parts, that is the sepal petals, pistils, and stamens, as seen in our previous video, they exist in groups of 4 or 5. That is for dicotyledons. But for monocotyledons, their floral parts usually exist in groups of 3s or multiples of 3s. Now, looking at leaves, for dicotyledons, their leaves have veins that are arranged in a branch network, while the monocotyledons have their leaves just running parallel to one another. Now, their vascular bundles for their stems and roots are usually arranged in a regular pattern, but if you look at that of the monocotyledons, you find out that their vascular bundles for the stem are usually scattered, while that of the root is arranged in a ring and then having a large pit. Now, their root structures is in such a way that the dicotyledons have tap roots, while the monocotyledons have a fibrous root system. The dicotyledons, finally, they go through secondary growth, while the monocotyledons do not go through secondary growth. So that is all for the plant kingdom. Moving on to the animal kingdom, we have divisions, 2 divisions. The first one being the invertebrate, and then the second one being the vertebrate, or you can call them the invertebrata and then the vertebrata. Now, all animals belong to this kingdom and they are usually motile. Now, the contrast to the plant kingdom, they don't produce their own food, rather they depend on ready-made food from their surroundings. Now, looking at the taxonomy of the kingdom Animalia, we'll first of all take that of the division Invertebrata, that is animals that don't have backbones. Under this division, we have the phylum Porifera, we have phylum Colenterata, we have phylum Platyhelminthes, phylum Nematoda, phylum Annelida, phylum Mollusca, phylum Echinodermata, and then phylum Arthropoda. So we'll look at them one after the other. First, going with phylum Porifera, these the sponges. Now, they are usually primitive multicellular animals with asymmetric bodies. They are found not moving around because they are simple aquatic invertebrates. They don't move around so much. They're just found attached to rocks or shells. Now, their shape is, they give the shape of a simple sponge with a vast-shaped body with an internal cavity and a single opening at the top. Now, most of them are hermaphrodites, which means they have both male and female sex organs. Now, we'll move over to phylum Colenterata. This example of animals found in this phylum is the hydra, jellyfish, sea anemones. Now, they are known to be multicellular organisms with 2 distinct body layers. That is, they are said to be diploblastic. They have the inner layer called the endoderm and the outer layer called the ectoderm. Then they also have one body cavity that we call the enteron, and they have only one opening called the mouth and no anus. Now, moving on to the phylum Platyhelminthes, they are called the flatworms, and this is where you find the planaria, liver fluke, tapeworm. They are known to be soft and flat with segmented body. They are still multicellular or have no body cavity, and they are bilaterally symmetrical in such a way that if you cut them into 2, the 2 halves are identical. Now, they also have a definite head and a tail end. Their opening is usually only the mouth. There's no anus as well. Then for phylum Nematoda, they are called the roundworms. This is where you find the ascaris, hookworm, guinea worm. Now, they are also soft, but their bodies are cylindrical and pointed at both ends. Now, this roundworm have body cavity that we call the pseudocoelom. Now, they also have both mouth and anus. That is the difference between them and the phylums and the phyla that we have. listed under animal kingdom so far, and they are also bilaterally symmetrical. Most of them are parasitic while others are free living. Then we look at phylum Annelida. Phylum Annelida are known to be the segmented worms. That is example the earthworm, leech, sea worm. Their body is segmented with each segment being separate from the other one by a septa, and they have alimentary canal with mouth and anus, and they possess a true body cavity with a distinct head. Then we look at phylum Mollusca. For the phylum Mollusca, we know them to be the soft-bodied organisms. That is, organisms like the snail, the mussels, the octopus. Now, they have soft, unsegmented bodies with tentacles on their heads for sensitivity. And some of them have calcareous shells, example, the snail. And they usually have muscular foot that help them to crawl and burrow. Then the next one is the phylum Echinodermata, where you find the starfish, sea urchin, sea cucumber. They have no distinct head, and their body is usually radially symmetrical in adults and bilaterally symmetrical in larvae. And they also have the tube foot, which they use for movement. Then we go to the phylum Arthropoda. This is the largest phylum in the animal kingdom, and it is divided into 4 classes. That is class Crustacea, Insecta, Arachnida, and Myropoda. But generally, in this phylum, their bodies are usually segmented with exoskeleton that is made of chitin, and they have pointed appendages, and also they undergo the process of molting, that is the shedding of their exoskeletons, which help them to grow. And their bodies are usually divided into 2 or 3 portions that we call the head, the thorax, and the abdomen. Now we'll pick these classes that are under Arthropoda and we'll discuss them one after the other. First, we'll be looking at the class Crustacea, where you have your crayfish, crab, prawn. These ones, they are mostly aquatic, but some of them are also free living. They are mostly aquatic and free living, and their head usually bears a pair of stalked compound eyes. Now, for the class Insecta, we find insects like the cockroach, butterfly, aphids, grasshopper. Now, an insect has a well-defined head, thorax, and abdomen. Then we look at the class Myropoda. This is where you see the centipedes, the millipedes. Now, for a myropoda, there is a head and a long segmented body. Now, the segments are quite similar, but for the centipede, it has a pair of walking legs for each segment. And then for the millipede, there are 2 pairs. Then we see the class Arachnida, where we see the spiders, scorpions, mites, and ticks. Now, an arachnid has a body that is divided into 2 parts, that is having a cephalothorax and an abdomen. Then we'll move over to the division vertebrata, having looked at the division in vertebrata. Now, in this division, we'll be looking at animals that have backbone, and we only have 1 phylum in this division, that is the phylum Chordata. Now, the phylum Chordata is split into 5 classes, namely the class Pisces, amphibia, reptilia, aves, and mammals. It's also worthy of note for the features that generally all the animals that are found in the phylum Chordata have a bilaterally symmetrical body that is divided into a head, a trunk, and a tail. And for most vertebrates, a neck joins the head to the trunk. Now, every animal in the phylum Chordata also has an internal skeleton known as endoskeleton that is made up of bones and cartilages. Now, they also have a well-developed central nervous system, well-developed sense organs, a working blood system, 2 pairs of limbs, kidneys for excretion, skin also may be naked or sometimes having scales or feathers or even hairs. Now, we'll pick the classes one after the other and look at their own specific features. Now, the first one we'll be looking at is the class Pisces, where you find the fishes like the shark, the tilapia, etc. Now, these ones, they are mostly aquatic. They live in water and they are cold-blooded. We call them poikilothermic. We say they are poikilothermic. Now, it means that their body temperature changes with their environment. Now, their teeth is usually of the same size and shape. That is, we say that they have a commodont dentition. Now, their heart is divided into 2 chambers. Their body as well is streamlined, which enables them to cut through water easily. Now, for respiration, they use their gills, and then for movement, they use fins. Now, we'll look at the class Amphibia. For the class Amphibia, we find the toad, frogs, newts, etc. Now, they are also poikilothermic, but they have moist skin. Their skin is usually soft. Their body is usually soft without scales, and they are able to breathe in water, but also live on land. They have gills that are present in their tadpoles and liver stages, but when they reach adult age, they usually have their lungs. Then they have long sticky tongues that help them to capture prey for food, and then their fertilization is usually internal. Then we move over to the class Reptilia, This is where we find the likes of snakes, tortoise, chameleon, lizard, etc. There are many of them. Now, their body now is covered with dry honey waterproof scales, and they have long tail with also homodont dentition. That is, their dentition is really of the same sizes and shapes. And then they are pentadactyl. Pentadactyl means that their limbs and digits usually end in claws. They are also poikilothermic, and they have their lungs for gaseous exchange. And then that is it for the class Reptilia. For the class Aves, that is where we find the birds like the fowl, parrot, eagle, etc. Now, for a change, in comparison to the other classes that we've been talking about, these class Aves are homothermic. That is, their body temperature is constant, and their body is differentiated into small head, trunk, and a tail. Then some of them are flightless, like the fowl, while some of them can fly, like the eagle. And then they have feathers and wings for flight and beaks for feeding. Now, this beak is adapted to the kind of food that they consume. Then they also have scaly legs and have very good sight. They have very good sight. Now, it's also that important that we note that for class Aves, that is a bird, that they only have the inner and the middle ear with no outer ear. Then we'll look at the last class under phylum Chordata, that is the class Mammalia, where you find us human beings, the goats, elephants, lion, etc. Just like seen in class Aves, the class Mammalia, they are also homothermic. There is a constant body temperature. Their bodies are usually covered with hairs, or in the case of some animals, we call it folds. Now, there is a difference in the dentition. For class Mammalia, there is a heterodont kind of dentition where their teeth are not of the same size and shapes. And they also have two pairs of limbs, well-developed brain, four-chambered heart, and external ears, unlike the Aves that just have the inner and the middle ear. Now, they also show parental care to their young ones. That is, the animals in the class Mammalia tend to take care of their young ones for a certain period to be able to ensure that the young ones can survive in that environment. And that brings us to the end of this video that we looked over the plant kingdom and the animal kingdom. Join us in our next video as we look over a new topic.